Hello and welcome to this on-demand webinar being recorded about the World Rugby Law Trials for season 2021 to 22. My name is Michael Patz. I'm the Match Official Development Manager here at England Rugby, and this afternoon we've got a couple of outstanding guests. We've got Chris White, who's the National Referee Academy Manager, and Owen Taylor, who's one of our Match Official developers. Owen is also a referee with the national panel, so has been using some of the global law trials already in some pre-season. What we'd like to do this afternoon is to go through the laws that are on trial and also give a bit of context, a wee bit of Q&A around that, so questions and answers, and then we proceed later on to tell you what the next steps are. So, Chris, just from your perspective, what's your experience around global law trials and variations while you've been refereeing?
Well, over the years, obviously, we've had a whole number of law changes, and I think it's quite important to get the philosophy side of it right in our heads as to what's happening and what we're trying to achieve. And I think that makes it easier for us as referees to deliver it and for everyone else to understand. I'm no different from probably most people in that I prefer to see the visuals rather than it. And we're all rugby people who it sinks into our DNA once we've seen matches and once we've seen games and once we've seen scenarios, it becomes real and it sort of steps off the page, if you like. So I'm certainly one of those people who've been trying to watch the Rugby Championship and going, there's an example of the law changes there, and just beginning to see how it affects players' behaviour. So the visual side is really important to me, and I definitely encourage everyone to try and watch as much rugby at the moment, and certainly in their friendlies and in their club matches, these things are happening, and it's an opportunity to have a chat about it. It always brings me back to the law changes of sort of when the game really started, and somebody once gave me a book, I don't know why, of the 1870 laws from rugby school, and that's actually fascinating because if you just look at the pitch dimensions of that time, you've basically got a rectangle. And in the preceding sort of 150 years, we've managed to fill that rectangle in with all sorts of dots and dashes and lines, and they've all got little laws attached to them as well. So you actually go back to it and you think, well, how did the game actually evolve? And it was fantastic, I think, if we believe the stories, that it was the players at the time who sat around after the game and thought, well, how can we make this game better? We've got the game that we're inventing here. We've got sole charge of this. And it was them who drove it. And I think if we try and see that with what's happening with World Rugby now, and they're trying to improve the game, technology has obviously made it a lot more easier to actually change things and to discuss them on a global level. It can mean that law changes can hurtle in quite quickly, and even sort of little nuances around it. But basically, we've got that opportunity to change things a lot quicker, and we know that these law changes have been a result of law trials which have been tried out. So the players were the ones who made the law, and I think it's really important that this is about the players. Quite often people think that it's us as referees that have changed the law, and we go to somebody and say, well, you've changed. No, I haven't changed the law, it's World Rugby. And we should always remember that, and perhaps some of the clubs and coaches and certainly the spectators should remember that we haven't made them up, but we do want to make them work, and we've got to believe in them. So that's really important. I just remember once sitting in a post-match dinner at Six Nations, and a very wise Welsh president talked about law changes, and there'd been a raft of them at the time, and he said, look, for the sake of the players, we need to make sure that we control the law changes and get them right for the understanding of the crowd. And he then said, thankfully, I was the only ref in the room, I think, for the sanity of the referees, that we need to understand why we're doing this. And I think when we look at these law changes, we really have got that element of something that's good, been seen to good for the game at the moment. And the three elements I see are safety, in terms of, and we've talked a lot about contact, the amount of tackling that goes on in the game. Also space, and actually creating that space to allow people to play. And lastly, encouraging the speed of the game. And you only have to look at other sports to see the way that sport is evolving now, whether we're looking at the 100 in cricket, or the use of the way the football is being refereed in the Premiership at the moment. All about how we can encourage this game to be better. We go back to rugby school in 1870, whatever it was, Patsy, I think you were there. That allows us to see how it's evolved and continues to evolve. So the principles of refereeing don't change, Patsy and Owen. I don't think we're there to help the game. We're there to facilitate, firm but fair. We like to communicate. We want to referee the contest, and as I think we talked to you about before, people understand what we're trying to do, and we manage to communicate it. The last thing I would say about any law changes is whenever we look at it, we think, hang on, how can we help ourselves? What's going to make it easier for us to sell this and to actually referee it on the day? So when we look at these now, it's what's going through your head, and the 50-22, there's a conversation in our own heads that will take place now around, was that pass back? Now, we've played that game on the 22 for a few years now. So those are the little things which I think are important. So that's my overriding philosophy, which we can take with us. I don't know if you two guys agree.
I think we've already discussed it, Chris, but Owen, you've obviously done a wee bit of pre-season. I know you've got a lot of sort of relationships with the coaches and things. Is that something that you've experienced when you've been chatting around these?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we've got to bear in mind, it's like Chris said there, that we've got loads of transferable skills that we're already using in our refereeing before these law trials came out. So when we're looking at the 50-22 and the conversations we're having in our head of, was it taken in? Have I had a phase? How am I going to communicate this to the players? We've been doing that around the 22-metre line anyway, in terms of how we exit there. So we've got those transferable skills in our locker, just to apply effectively to a different line on the pitch. I think the big thing that we've got to do is work out how this is going to be communicated to the players. We want to be adding value. We want these laws to add value and safety, speed, and space to the game. So for me, a lot of it is about communication, whether that's pre-match, during the match, or post-match afterwards. We've got to work out how we can add as much value and get these really working well throughout the game, whether that's in the professional game or down into the community game. We need to make sure, have we got a plan as referees, how we can put these into place, really.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Owen. We've talked about these for a wee bit, so let's start getting into it, really. 50-22. Hopefully, everyone's sort of seeing the definition there, and I think the biggest thing is that the ball being kicked from inside your own half and going indirectly into touch inside the 22. I mean, that's the essence of it. And then the team kicking, get the resultant put in at the line out. So what I'd like to do is to take through some animations, and certainly just come in, guys, as these go through. So we look at example A, which is whereby the phase of play originates in the kicking team's own half. They then kick the ball, and as the little arrow shows, it bounces inside the 22, and that resultant line out throw is to the team who kicked. So that's the one change. And Owen, you talked about that communication. If it's already inside the half, would you be saying anything, or would you just let play go?
I think the only reason I'd be wanting to talk in this situation is if a 10 or whoever was going to kick the ball was asking me. Again, similar to what I would do in the 22.
Yeah.
Refs, are we inside? That's kind of what I spoke to the teams that I've done in pre-season, is say, look, if you're not sure, just ask me and I'll give you an answer. If you don't say anything, I can't answer anything. I wouldn't probably be looking to say anything, because hopefully there shouldn't need any to be said.
No, absolutely. And Chris, just coming to the fact of whether it's a professional game or whether it's the community game, I guess the ARs and touch judges, and certainly club touch judges from our perspective, are going to need a fair bit of support from the referee on the day around this. Yeah,
no, I think we shouldn't underestimate that they will be put under a bit of pressure, because the expectation is that they are themselves professional, or that they are neutral, or that they're not neutral. So we do need to be protective of our colleagues on the line. Often they're press people. There's some excellent people who do it, but we've got to make sure that we just protect them. And if we do need to step in, it becomes our decision. We might have a brief conversation, but it's our decision. We own it. And again, we rationalise with everyone around us about why we've made that decision. And I don't expect us to get it all right. There was a great example in that Rugby Championship recently where I think the Aussie scrum half, there was a ruck 2 metres in the defending. He took it back over the halfway line, bobbed it in, and I'd forgotten about it. And the touch judge hadn't. He happened to be a professional. They got it right between them, but he asked the question. And all of a sudden, we're back to what Owen was talking about taking a picture and about being proactive here and having that line of the halfway line where it triggers something in our head to help everybody, and that's the best way of helping here. If it does go wrong, then let's just plan what we're going to say. If it goes wrong and it bobbles in, then you might be saying, no, I'm not sure, so I'm going to give it to the defending side, and everyone just needs to accept that. We're not in a TMO world here or a professional world. Just going back a stage, what we're trying to do with this law, we're trying to create a bit of space. We're trying to stop the domination of the defensive lines. Do I see this happening in the under-15s playing on the first team pitch on a Sunday morning? Well, I don't know whether you've got an under-15 who can do it, but watching some youth rugby recently, it wasn't top of the pops in terms of their tactics as to whether they were doing it. But it will happen by surprise, and I totally get it. We need to look after everyone to make sure that we're trying our hardest to help, and we'll do our best to get the right decision at the time.
Absolutely. So we've got the second example here with the phaser players in their own half. Ball's kicked directly into touch, and defending team throws in to the line out from where the ball was kicked. So that's no change in law. So I don't intend dwelling on that unless either of you guys have got anything specific to say about that. But that's just law as it is, isn't it? So let's have a look at the next one, which the phaser play occurs in the opposition's half, and they were talking about the ball being passed back and then being kicked. And I think, Owen, you've already sort of covered this around is making sure that any communication we give there, we've already done previously, haven't we, in relation to the 22 line anyway?
Yeah, I think the big thing there is if this scenario does happen, is that if you say something as it's being kicked or just after the kick, so that's carried in, again, same as you would do in the 22, nobody's surprised when they don't get the ball back, and it's kind of selling that decision and teeing up that decision. So when we get down at the line out, everybody should have a decent idea of what's going to happen, rather than it all being a big surprise when we set the line out. Yeah,
and that comes back to Chris's point around no surprises and understandable decisions, isn't it? So it's a really good point. Fourth one here is around the phaser play originating inside their own 22, kicked from the 22 into the 22. Going back to your point, Chris, I'm not sure how many under 15s on a full team pitch will manage that. I don't know if I could manage that. But again, it's just that it's in the half, it's bouncing in the 22, therefore the kicking team put the ball in. Yeah.
You've never refereed a windy day at Stowe on the Wold, have you?
No.
At this point, it's landed over the Cotswold stone wall at the bottom. So
yeah, I think that just gives that example. So as long as it's in the half, whether it's inside the 22 or not, if it bounces in the opposition 22, then the line out stays. And then we've got where there's a number of phases. So the ball is eventually driven back into the team playing with the ball back into their own half. There's been two phases of play in the opposition's half. They're now back into the final phase of play in their half. It's then kicked, and again it's that fact that the kicking team throws into the line out. I guess the only question I'd have here for you, Owen, is in relation to phases of play. I think we're quite clear on that. But something like a free kick, does that actually change for 50-22? If I take a free kick from inside my own half and it bounces as it should do indirectly into touch inside the 22, is that allowed?
Yeah, so if we see that as being the phase of being the free kick, as long as it ticks the other boxes in terms of directly into touch and you were inside your own half and it goes into the 22, then that's absolutely fine. You'll be rewarded with the line out.
Brilliant. And I think this one again, Chris, we've discussed this numerous times. Someone's obviously watched my inability to take a restart on the halfway line. So if the restart's comes back for a scrum or a line out as an option. So if it's been kicked and then goes into touch, I think we're quite comfortable now that will be the kicking team putting in the ball at the subsequent line out, aren't we?
Yeah, unless they shove them a long way over, but we would assume that won't happen. If it's attack, I don't think they'll be looking to do that, be in and out and compensate. But again, that happened in the first game of the Rugby Championship. Everyone looked round and and that was the first question. There's a picture of it now in your head, whether the referee was right or wrong, and we now know. So it's part of our DNA now. We understand that.
Absolutely. What I'd like to do is just show a couple of clips here, and I'm not sure that any sound will come over on these, but certainly they give the live examples, and we'll make these videos available, and Owen will talk to that once we get to the end of our webinar this afternoon. Let me just play the first clip. So, ball clearly taken back. We've got that phase of play whereby the tackle has occurred. And it bounces nicely into touch inside the 22. Anything there from your perspective, Owen, of what you'd be communicating?
No, other than kind of what I've said previously, that would be a time early in the season when we want this learning to be passed throughout the teams, is that you'd be indicating for me that, look, you're inside now, something like that. I don't think we need to sort of go too far into it, other than it just being, look, you're inside now.
I'm really fascinated, Patz, as to whether behaviour will change, because this law is about behaviour change. I don't think that was a planned move. I think it was a bit of skill from the player when they got checked on that just on halfway line. Are we going to see a defence dropping someone back for that? Is that going to create the space on the outside? Will we now get 3 passes? Will we have 1 less tackle? Will we be into space? That is the bottom line with this. Is it going to happen?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing of it being, like Chris said, being aware of it happening. Yeah. Something like that, the players may or may not have any intention of going, oh, if I make this box kick, it's going to I'm going to get the line out back. They're just looking for the territory. For us as referees, it's kind of the onus is on us to make sure that we're remembering as soon as that kick has been taken, thinking, oh, is 50-22 a live option or not?
No, that's great. I think we've covered a fair amount there with the 50-22, and I know I jumped on a slide there, so apologies for that. But we're on to the next sort of global law trial, which is around that latching flying wedge. So this is around the one player pre-latching prior to contact, and it's to avoid the mini scrums occurring, which we've seen previously. But I think that the big thing here is around the supporting player has got to stay on their feet. So they need to make sure that they, if they do go into contact, if the ball carrier goes to ground, that the supporting player keeps their feet from that perspective. Chris, anything that you want to add around the flying wedge, or sorry, the one player latch?
Let's just go back a stage into that word contest. We want to referee contests. We've probably been guilty, along with the players, of not allowing a contest at the tackle by allowing people to fall flat on their face. Mm-hmm. You've also got that safety element, that having extra bodies creating extra weight. So again, this is moving in that direction. So again, I understand why it's happening, and therefore it makes it easier for me to referee and sell it to somebody else. So that's what I see here.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a number of clips here, and we'll play a couple of these. But a couple of questions that have been raised around it is certainly around the latcher. If they attach in the field of play and it goes into in goal, and they end up on top of the ball carrier, would that be a penalty kick, or would that be seen as a play on, Chris?
Play on at that stage. Once you crossed over into in goal, then we're in a slightly different realm. It's try time, isn't it? If you've got that far and you've scored, it's not illegal if you're landing on someone in that situation in goal, and it's try time. And the All Blacks, I think, provide a very nice picture for us. If we don't need to see it now, but again, that's illustration of the law.
Yeah. And I guess, Owen, just coming back to if it's in the field of play, if that supporting player goes off their feet and prevents a potential contest, I take it that you'd be looking to sanction with a penalty kick there.
I think we've got to. It's that big word of materiality every time we referee. If the player comes off their feet, there's maybe nobody there to compete. Can we maybe let that one go, but always have it in our pocket, thinking, we don't want this to start being a trend. We want to make sure that there's always going to be a viable contest. The second one to consider is if that player goes off their feet and they instantly look to try and get back on their feet. They maybe haven't deliberately gone off feet. It's just the mechanics have taken them to ground, but they're trying to get back legal, and they're trying to be legal as quick as possible. Again, we may look to sanction because we're going, ultimately you killed the contest right at the roots. But if they're trying to be legal, we want to always try and reward positive play, and that player is trying to be positive in that situation. But the main thing is if they're killing the contest and killing the continuity of the play, then we do want to be looking to sanction.
Okay, let's have a look at a couple of these if we can, if I can get the videos to play. So let's have a look. So we've got black 2 here. We're saying they must stay on their feet, and they're clearly off their feet. So let's see what materializes.
There's absolutely no chance that the gold team there can compete for that ball. So we're not actually playing a game. We're just allowing one side to have it. And again, we've probably been remiss on that over the years. So again, I can understand that. Yeah. Is there anything we can do beforehand? Owen was talking. We can say stay on our feet. I think if we run around shouting stay on our feet for 65 minutes, we probably haven't got the balance right. I think we need to remind people, and you can remind them before it happens. And look, there's plenty of very senior referees who you see in the last plays of game saying reload when one side is winning and trying to play the whistle down. That's when you see these penalties given, and the referee has almost set those decisions up, and everyone understands why they've been given that.
So I'll just show 2 more. One is here we've got the players staying on their feet and competing. He drives through. If we watch the number 2 there. Clearly stays up and makes a positive action, and for me that's what I'd be looking for there, is that positive action for that clear out rather than just flopping over to protect the ball.
I think a coach seeing their player 3 meters from the line, for want of a better word, being lazy and not going through with their technique would probably be the person he'd be talking to as the player and not the referee. Yeah. As long as we're consistent, which goes back to our principles.
Absolutely. And the last one I'll show from here, as I say, with these, we'll make sure these clips are made available for everyone, is another New Zealand Australia, and this time we're getting over the try line, and despite the number 2 going down, as you say, Chris, once they're over the try line, we're looking to reward for that effort, aren't we?
Yeah, the number 2 is actually trying very hard to stay on their feet there. They're driving up rather than down, and the game can continue there. Yeah. So there's the dynamic is an easy one to referee.
Yeah. Just coming back to you, Owen, is there anything that you've seen in the pre-season, the games that you've observed around this side of things?
It's 2 things about, if we think about our principles of refereeing, our sort of cell refereeing, we've got to think about safety and why we're not wanting those mini scrums. We're not wanting masses going into single players and single defenders. So we've got the safety element as to why this makes sense. And it's also the equitable side of things. Like Chris said in that first clip, Gold have absolutely no chance of having access to the ball. That breakdown is no longer fair, effectively, which is why we've got a sanction. I think it comes into play about those principles of refereeing, really, and thinking about how we can apply cell refereeing to these law trials. And this is a good one to try and apply those to.
Brilliant. So let's go to an interesting trial, which I think has probably caused a fair amount of debate compared to the first 2 we've just looked at, but it's the goal line dropout. And I've seen numerous tables drawn up about this around when a 22 may now occur instead of a goal line dropout, etc. But essentially what we're looking at here is the attacking team taking the ball into in goal, or being the cause of the ball going into in goal, rather than the defending team. So it talks about it will restart with the goal line dropout and the ball must travel 5 meters. The essence of the 5 meters is that the defending team, or sorry, the team receiving the ball, receiving the kick, must be also 5 meters back from the try line. So it gives that wee bit of space. But the kick itself can be taken anywhere within in goal. In relation to that, Chris, what's your sort of take on how to remember whether it's going to be a goal line dropout or a 22?
I think there's so few now reasons why there's a 22. Basically, your penalty kick isn't successful. Your drop kick attempt isn't successful. The ball is kicked dead by the attack. They're basically. I think I've just got that. That's basically what's going to happen, and that will trigger the 22. So everything else is therefore the goal line dropout, and then my head is into, well, that is going to change things. It might change the way people play near the goal line. And what's that going to make me do as a referee? I'm going to have to get my head up to see people out further wide, offside, etc. They might have a couple of goes. In goal, we've now got to make some very big decisions. I mean, before, when they all piled over and you thought, I'm not sure, I'll give you a 5 metre scrum, most sides were fairly, if not delighted if they'd scored, they were content with what they've got. So we've now got to work very hard to locate the ball when it comes to getting over the line, and then being very firm in selling our decision. Held up, dropped, and we're not having debates about this, so we've got to put ourselves in very best position to see that. If you're lucky enough to have touch judges, the philosophy for me is always you're better off on the inside of play. Otherwise, if you're on your own, you've got to be somewhere near, you've got to have location of the ball, and you've got to then be able to make that credible decision. So that's what this triggers to me. We know why we're doing it, and it will open up the game. And again, watching the Rugby Championship, there haven't been that many incidents now. Is that because they've changed? What has changed is that the defending side are very reluctant now to put the ball down in their 22, in their in-goal area, if they see the option to come out. So all of a sudden, I'm now doing more running. I've now got a scenario like a dropout, so I've got to ask myself some more questions about where am I going to stand so that I can see what's going on. The fact it can be anywhere along the line. Again, age probably gives me away here, but I would rather be on the inside of any kick, because at least I've got a chance of getting to both sides here. But I know that when I blow the whistle, the game isn't going to stop. The game is likely to start. So this is quite exciting. Now, some people may not like this. It's going to change the dynamic of 5 metre scrumming. Mm-hmm. So this is all that triggers in my mind the mechanics of how we do it as referees. The philosophy we'll live with. I don't think I've forgotten anything else. Any other reasons why we would have a 22? Forgotten is, and I haven't seen any yet. Owen, have I missed one?
I'm sure you haven't, Chris.
Right. So getting better as I've stopped refereeing the last year. So
absolutely. I think just for me, and as it's a restart, clearly the players have all got to be on side of the team that's kicking the ball, as we would expect from any dropout. But if the ball doesn't actually go the 5 metres, are we able to play advantage there for the opposition, as we would say for a restart on the halfway line that doesn't go 10 metres?
The good news is that this already, although many people might not realise it already exists in law if you don't manage to get the ball over for a 22. So you're taking, like Owen said earlier, you're taking a 22 metre and you're then translating it to a 5 metre. And yes, you can play advantage if you fail to get it over the line. I've hardly ever seen it, apart from that windy day at Stowe. You hardly ever see this happening. But once you've got it in the back of your head, it will hopefully come to the top of your head on that moment when it happens. So yes is the answer.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to be interested to see how many UB framed moments we have where someone takes a goal line dropout and hits their own post or something. That will be the interesting part, I think. Just from your point of view, Owen, have you actually seen any of these being undertaken in the pre-season?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had a couple of these early doors, and the biggest thing, like Chris said, it's making those big, sellable, understandable decisions. It's the first time that most players will have seen these happen, or there'll be a scenario that's not happened to them before. They may have had goal line dropouts, but it's just been quite sort of clear with going, this is what happened, this is what the resultant is, and there can't really be any discussions up for that. If we've got a held up, or we've got knock-ons, or the ball being grounded, etc. If we just say, look, this has happened, that means that we've got a goal line dropout. And the other thing as well is it allows just a little bit of time in terms of the community game. We may have had a little bit of time off sort of setting the scrum and allowing people to have a little bit of a break. So we may be able to use these moments to our advantage in being able to not sort of have chapter and verse around what's happened, but just being able to sort of slow down, explain to people, and then we don't really have much issue after that.
Awesome. Thanks, Owen. So I think that the last element that we want to cover off today is around the clear out and the safety of the jackler, and it's to certainly protect the lower limbs. We've got a couple of clips here where we can see this in action, but I think from what I've seen on the games being played, the vast majority about this is for us as match officials to make an early decision and make a decision to allow the game to sort of to continue if someone's got the ball lifted, etc. And certainly phrases that we used to hear and we certainly don't want to be hearing in the future is it didn't survive the clean out. We need to banish from that because this is around player safety ultimately. So what's your initial thoughts, Owen?
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing is when the breakdown refocus that you may have seen, it was it 2020, weren't it? The start of last season where sort of the Premiership and the Championship and rewarding that jackler early. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, we haven't had a chance to referee the breakdown like that. So we've kind of got a lot going on at the breakdown at this start of this season. Really, we've got that refocus at the breakdown, and we've also got this. Exactly like you say, we've got to try and reward the jackler early. If they're on the ball, they're always legal. They're trying to turn the ball over. They've done enough to deserve that ball. They've done enough to win that penalty or turn the ball over, and we get continuity. We've got to make those decisions, though. We can't sort of hold and wait and see what happens and kind of let things come out in the wash, because at that point we do end up having jacklers potentially having to survive clear outs and having people coming in from the side and getting rolled off the ball and things like that. So making that early decision is probably going to be the most important part.
Brilliant, thanks, Owen. I'll just show a couple of clips, and then Chris, I'd welcome your sort of thoughts from what you guys have discussed from the professional end as well. So let's have a look at a legal clean out to start with. So we look there, 14 comes in around the torso and takes and it's that lifting of the player rather than, or levering the player out rather than putting any weight down through the lower limbs is what we're looking for. I'll have a look at a couple of illegal ones just to see what they're like. Oops, sorry about that. I think we're going to get a second camera angle on this one, aren't we? If I remember rightly. Yeah.
So our jackler's starting to do a good job. And look, I think that is absolutely everything that we don't want to see here. There's actually two offences going on, and they're both before we've even invented a new law. One is a side entry. We know attacking side entries are one of the hardest things when a referee's having a really good game, and you chat to them afterwards. There's usually two attacking side entries when they just look at you and just, well, I didn't see that. And I said, I'm not surprised you didn't see it, because you're approaching, you're looking at the ball, you're looking at the jackler, you're looking at the clear out, and a mystery player has done something. So side entry is going to be the prerequisite to this, if you like. It's going to happen. And the second is no arms, and that's always been illegal as well. And the fact that the player literally puts themselves on the floor and is heading down at the same time, I think that one slide probably says everything about what's dangerous. Obviously, in our world, there's a TMO, and if somebody gets injured, then this is likely to be highlighted.
Yeah.
But that's where you asked what the difference was and what we've talked about, and I can imagine there'll be a few instances. I don't know that we'll see a huge number of these, but I think the sentiment is absolutely right, that we've got an illegal action, that it's dangerous. We've been given a picture of legally rolling somebody out. Good, okay. So we know that that's acceptable, and again, it starts upper body rather than lower body.
Just on that legal side, Chris, provided everything is legal, can the person clearing out still lift the leg of the jackler if they're driving them in a positive way?
Yeah, we've been told yes. So again, some things that should need to be told yes or no, and we've obviously been told yes. And also, a player going to ground to clear somebody can still do that if they're clearing them out. So I wonder how many we'll see of these. And Owen, look, had a couple of games. Have you seen? Has anything like this happened in your games?
No, because it comes back to that refocus where in the games that I've done, I've tried to go, okay, well, if I reward the jackler or kill off the jackler because they weren't legal, they never have to sort of receive these type of clear out. So I think that from my philosophy of the breakdown, that's been the key focus, is rewarding or killing off the jackler early, and they don't have to have any of these. I think, like you say, that the attacking side entry is always a difficult one from a referee anyway, because you kind of it always seems to come out of nowhere a little bit. But this very much falls into the realms of foul play now, doesn't it? Like you say, with the no arms and the side entry, they're kind of ticking all the boxes to not be rewarded.
And we talk about lifting legs. If we lift legs and tip somebody up on their head, then we have got what was originally foul play anyway. It's no longer driving somebody out. We've just got foul play.
Very true. Now, guys, I think we've covered the global law trials there, and thank you very much for your insight and your contributions. I mean, just from our point of view, we've obviously got a social media presence out there, and through er.com, through the England Rugby website. What's the proposal that we're going to do around how we can keep updating people?
Yeah, so we've got a resource at the minute which we're kind of looking for questions from the community. We know fine well that these are going to be discussed in clubhouses on Thursday nights between coaches and players, and on Saturday afternoons on drive homes and on the coach, etc. So we know that there's going to be plenty of questions out there. The big thing for us is that we can't answer them unless we know them. So there will be a chance for all sort of stakeholders of the game to get those questions into our department, and we'll look to answer as many as we can, if not all of them, or certainly find out answers. If you follow all our social media on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, there's going to be regular kind of what's the decision type thing, or was this right, was this wrong, and we're going to just put them out there, and we want the community to engage and buy into these law trials. And look, if you see things, have a watch of them, make a decision, and kind of let us know. But ultimately, we want to have that engagement with the whole game, not just match officials, because it affects everyone.
Yeah, I'm just mindful of that a lot of the clips we've shown are at the high end of the game at the moment, and the reason for that is purely we don't kick off until the 4th of September officially. So, but it's great that from your side, Chris, that we're getting this analysis coming through. We're getting these clips which are annotated and easy to follow for people. And the intention from our perspective, as Owen said, is to get some more that are community level sort of clips as well, so people can relate to those. But I think the actions and the clarity of some of those clips today, they wouldn't change if they were a community game. I take it, Chris, as well, from your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Same principles.
Yeah.
Space are the buzzwords at the moment, and don't forget to enjoy your refereeing when you're out there. That's
absolutely. Absolutely. No, I just leaves it for me guys to say thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I hope everyone's got something out of this afternoon's sort of presentation, our discussions. As we say, we'll certainly keep updating through the social media channels and through englandrugby.com. And like Owen said there, please, if you have got any views, if you've got any questions around it, please enter those onto the forums that we've set up there. But just leaves me to say thanks very much, guys, and I look forward to catching up soon.